Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to kind of move into a little bit about the new normal. Things have changed, that's for sure. Things are much different today than they were 3 months ago, 1 month ago, even. Things will continue to change, and we need to be able to change with them. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about the new normal or what we expect to see as we move into the next several months and we start to redefine what it's like to run retail operations and to use the workforce management applications that are available today and will be continued to be available and will change as we move forward in the future. A little bit about what's been happening. Store volumes have been great in grocery. I mean, we've seen a large increase, anywhere from 30 to 80% increases in grocery sales volumes, but they will normalize at some point in time, and they're already starting to come back down towards a normal range as we continue to fill our pantries. However, we will continue to be at a much higher level than we were going into this from a grocery standpoint. Grocery has been picking up a lot of the sales activity that the traditional small box and large box retailers have not been able to pick up, as most of the small box retailers have been shut down. But they're going to start to reopen. I know in the states we're starting to see organizations, states rather, that are letting organizations start to open slowly. Of course, it'll be a new normal for them as they open. It won't be business as usual, but they are starting to open. We'll be opening with a lot of what we've learned from grocery and big box retailers that have been open throughout the last month and a half. A lot of the social distancing will continue in the small box retailers. There will be things that need to be considered, such as, possibly no returns, no fitting rooms. Even though we have fitting rooms, we may be shutting them down for a while until we understand better what's happening with the virus and how long it lasts on clothing. So there may be some changes in those small box retailers from the way they have done business in the past. The lessons that we've learned, however, from grocery, the social distancing, the one-way aisles, the more space between racks will be put into play in some of these smaller retailers. The whole supply chain and how it reacts to increases and decreases within this supply chain, and then stocking and potentially special shopping hours for our frontline workers will also be employed within the small box retailers as well. We will have to continue as we move forward into more and more retail and fast food and whatnot restaurants open. We will have to continue to focus on the health and safety of our customers. Sanitation will continue to be number one. All the things that we should have been doing all along, we've now relearned and have been doing in grocery and the big box retailers. But we will continue to be working towards the sanitation and the health and welfare of our customers and our employees. We're going to continue to have to build trust in the brand. Customers are going to want to see that the retailer, as he opens his doors, or he or she open their doors, are really taking their sanitation and health into consideration and helping build that trust in the brand. Things like new restroom procedures. Those stores that have had open restrooms for employees and customers will now have to start thinking about what does that mean and what does that look like when we open up. One of the big things we're seeing is occupancy rates. A lot of municipalities are dictating how many people can be in the store, whether that be like Walmart saying no more than 20% of their allowable occupancy rate in the store at any given point in time. Massachusetts, 40%. Each area is different in regards to what they allow, and occupancy itself is becoming really high on the priority list, which tends to make it more labor intensive as we look at how many people do we have to have up front counting people So, we can certainly talk, and we'll talk in a little bit greater detail around some of the applications that are available out there to help automate that whole process. And then, as I mentioned earlier, social distancing will continue. I'm seeing in grocery stores today, not only the occupancy with the traffic counters and the signs on the door, only 140 in or 50 people allowed. I saw one retailer in Italy where it was no more than 20 allowed in the store at any given point in time. And you had 10 minutes from the time you entered to the time you exited the store to do your shopping, pay for your goods, and leave. I'm starting to see floor markers and overhead signs and just a lot of education. All of that we're seeing currently being done in the groceries will continue on into the other retailers as well. One of the things that I'm seeing in the headlines this weekend was, non-grocery businesses stepping into grocery delivery. So, even if I'm only opening some of my stores, can I start to add some grocery items in there as well? And then on the flip, we've seen stores like DSW who've started to put end caps of shoes into grocery stores. So again, thinking outside of the box and what does that new normal look like? I'm used to selling shoes only in my locations, but if I'm not able to open those locations, how do I continue to sell and to gain profits? Thinking outside the box, putting in pallets of shoes into grocery stores helps not only the retailer but also helps the customer to be able to get those much needed items. As you look back at everything I've talked about, there will be some changes in the mindsets around the workforce management area. So, additional labor is needed in the stores to handle these extra activities. Grocery stores have put up sneeze guards, I call them, but the plastic plexiglass between the cashier and the customer. Those need to be cleaned. They need to be cleaned at a frequency. They weren't there in the past, but they are there today. So there will be additional labor needs. If I need to put someone up front to man or monitor the doorways to allow people in and out to remain within occupancy, I need to add additional labor. So there will be need for us to really look at the labor that we have in the store, and are there better ways to do things? We're going to be adding time for hand sanitizers and cleaning baskets and carts, and so what are the things that we need to do to challenge the old ways? If we've always done it one way and it's cost us X, is there a way to do this differently? I always go back to the grocery offices and counting cash. We do it every day, but do we need to do it every day, or can we reconcile every other day or once a week? So we will have to go back to the old ways of doing things and challenge them for ways that we can reduce labor within the stores so that we can pick up the additional labor that we have to pay for in those new activities. Scheduling will need to become more ad hoc, more real time. People may call in sick. There may be more, as somebody gets the virus or feels like they might have the virus, they don't want to infect others. They may have to call in. They may have to have switches of their shifts. So scheduling needs to be more nimble as well. Scheduling across departments, we've seen a lot of grocers, a lot of big box retailers do that, but also across stores. And then even thinking further outside of the box, but across brands and across different retailers will become more prevalent. It's certainly in the works today. We're seeing where one organization is reaching out to another, completely different in scope, but saying, hey, I have to furlough my people. Could you pick them up, or would you be looking for people, because I see that you're adding 30,000 people, 50,000, 150,000 people to your workforce, and there will be a lot of that handshaking and across retailer going on, and scheduling will need to keep up with that as well. Data will continue to be king. It's without data and good data, we have no good history. We have no way to be able to predict what's going to happen, and those predictions are changing on a daily basis as the world is changing. So that data needs to keep up with it. And then as we ask our employees to do more, And to do different things, we need some way through task management to be able to say, here's what I need you to do, here's how to do it, and did you do it? So at that compliance, that whole complete closed loop as well. Labor rates will remain higher, as we've seen. Some of the frontline uh, folks have gotten paid more, $2 an hour, $3 an hour during this time frame. That may start to come down, but I'm also seeing where they're extending that. So again, that's more drive on the workforce management to look for better ways to do things so that we can help stem that increased cost of doing business. And then we'll go back to the data point that I meant, and Fernando will talk a bit about the data when he gets in as well. But traffic information will continue to be used to drive our labor demand. Not just transactions going through the front end, but also the traffic that's coming in the store. So I talked about occupancy. That's kind of that missing piece. All of us know what goes through our registers, but what's coming in the door, what's in the store, and how long are they there? So kind of the dwell times, that whole arrival and exit scenario so that we can better plan through our workforce management the needs of the customer to be able to make their shopping as smooth and contactless as possible. The employee data and preferences will become more critical as people are, either working more than one job or need additional time off to take care of loved ones, or their kids are home and they're teaching. They may have to change their availabilities. So a lot of the data and preferences from our employees will become more critical and will need to be changed that much more. The more and the more and more our data points continue to be added, it just continues to add more and more complexity to the schedule. So we need a good workforce management application that will help us through those complex times. And then the health and safety I mentioned earlier will be continue to be a concern as we move forward. Fernando, maybe the next slide there, that'd be great. Clocking in and out will need to be contactless completely. People are not necessarily willing to be able to clock in on a device that 300 or 400 other people have clocked in throughout the day, 50 people, whatever the number is in the building. So clocking in and out will be looking towards Bluetooth or GPS or facial recognition or other means of making it a complete touchless system. People are happy using their own devices. They may not be as clean as people think they are, but they're happy because it's their device. So giving them the opportunity to be able to clock in, clock out remotely, to be able to handle time off requests, preferences, availability, shift swapping back and forth from employee to employee. Those are the kind of things that they're going to want to do in a more touchless environment. And then, scheduling methods are going to change. I've kind of alluded to that, but we need longer schedules as people work more and more jobs to make ends meet, or they work more part-time jobs. And Fernando will talk a little bit about the part-time versus the full-time. They need more advanced notice as to what their schedules are so that they can plan their lives better with kids at home and loved ones and adults and my 91-year-old mother-in-law lives with me. We need to make sure that somebody's there at all times. It'd be great to have a longer schedule, so 2 to 3 weeks out, as opposed to that traditional I put it up on Friday for a Monday or a Sunday start. A lot of organizations have started to look at that, and it gives a better opportunity for employees to have a better quality of life. Total store scheduling. Right now, a lot of organizations have somebody in each department doing the schedule, and they spend a half hour, they spend an hour, depending on the size of the department. One person scheduling for the entire store is certainly where a lot of organizations have moved to, but then centralized scheduling, either regionally, district-wise, region-wise, or even just chain. There's an organization out there that writes schedules 3 to 4 weeks out, and it's done at corporate for all 500 stores. So that centralized scheduling will also be something that we should be continuing to move towards, because that helps us as well within the store in regards to the hours that are necessary to handle the safety and security of our customers. And then that ability, as I mentioned, to swap shifts easily, the ability to pick up shifts in multiple locations. If I can work in the store down the street, it'd be great to be able to see that and make that easier for me to pick up. And then the ability to split shifts. Again, as our demands have changed and our employees' demands have changed, if I can pick up 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours in the evening, and governmental regulations allow for that in certain areas, the ability to be able to schedule for that is something we see as a potential change in the future as well. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit about the resource pool. It'll vary. Workers will come from a more varied background. We see a lot more gig employees in the system. I was talking to a retailer the other day who said, "Yeah, we've hired 20,000 gig employees to be able to come into our warehouses and to help make sure that the supply chain is up and running and we can keep up with the demand within our stores." So we believe that the gig economy, the gig employees are going to become more prevalent. I mentioned earlier, that cross utilization of workers from disparate organizations. I mean, if I can pick somebody up from Home Depot into my grocery store in their off season, and they can then in turn, in the May season, when it comes time for them to have the do-it-yourselfers come more into play, they can pick up some of my employees. It's that one hand washes another type thing. And then, gig workers will need to access the schedule regardless of where they are. They're going to need to be able to see it. And then we're also seeing a move towards, with the gig employees, they like to be, they're independent contractors. They'd like to be paid as soon as they do the work. So that express pay or third party, through third party apps, the ability to be able to pay them as they move forward. I saw this weekend, Sunday, in the headlines that Instacart's going to hire another 250,000 more gig workers to meet the current demand as more and more organizations move to the delivery, selecting in the store and delivering to the home, as opposed to me having to go to the store to do my shopping. All of those will play back into the workforce management arena, and we'll need to make sure that we meet those demands as we continue to move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fernando to kind of talk a bit more about the workforce management side of the equation. Fernando?
Thanks a lot, Rich, and hello to everyone. Yes, so we're talking about the changes that are happening in our lives, in our communities. We are all connected, and so we're all definitely being affected together. Having said that, you know, automation change is always definitely a factor that we're not most of us walk into it willingly. So definitely this crisis has created a forced change in the way that we do business and how the companies work. And again, everything goes down to to really the basis and the foundation of how we do business. And so um, automation is here to enhance people's jobs and to enhance people's lives. Automation is not here to take away from people. So when we keep that in mind, is how can we do more with less? How can we do more with the resources that we have? Everybody's got 24 hours a day. No, I've never met anybody, whether rich or poor, that told me that yesterday they had 27 hours, in a day. So we all have a finite resource. It's precious. It's called time. So automation really enhances the ability for us to do more with it. But through this challenge, uh, you know, the question is not why is it happening or how is it going to impact me. I believe that the question is what can we know? What can we learn? A lot of people may not like the changes that are happening. Some people may, but knowledge is power. So Rich mentioned to it, and I believe that there's two things that are king right now. One, cash is king. So companies that are definitely in a strong financial state will definitely be able to weather the storm a lot better than those people that are having, lower resources. So cash is king, but also knowledge is king right now. The more that you can know, the more that you can, analyze and take steps toward positive and effective change. So definitely, there's an impact on the local and international workforce. There, here in Canada, there's a lot of industry in the food, especially in agriculture, that depend on foreign labor. And obviously, with flights being affected and international travel being affected, there is a challenge that is being posed. So the question is not, why is this happening? The question is, how can you engage with your local workforce? There's an impact on scheduling. There was a company, massive manufacturer in multiple locations in Canada and the US, that they had to be shut down because there was active cases showing up of COVID, and that created two circumstances. One, all the people that were in proximity to those people had to basically be put in quarantine, and then the remainder of those that maybe became very concerned and decided not to show to work. So management is trying to figure out how to make the best of the information that they've got. Who can they count on, right? And that's a real little bit of a difficult number to predict, because you could count on somebody physically, but they're not in a position where they want to put their families at risk. So they are opting not to go to the workplace. And completely understandable, but the reality is there are demands that need to be met. Retail curbside. Look at the retail. I'm glad for these responses that are being implemented, but the question is, how has that impacted your customer experience? Right? I myself made an order for an item that I would get in a couple of days, and it took 9 days for me to get. And definitely some process there were broken, and everybody's trying to do their best, and I get that. But here the question is, how can we do it better and faster to make sure that the customer experience is not being affected? Because there are two uh, potential effects. There is your sales, right? If people are thinking it's going to take longer than normal, maybe they're not going to, purchase and wait for the product to be prepared and be ready for pickup at curbside. That could deter potential sales. The other side is you're having an extra expense, because when people used to go into the store and purchase and spend however long they wanted to spend, now you have an associate that is being paid by the hour, going into the different sections and picking up those products for the customer at no extra cost. So you have an income potential issue, and you have an increased expenditure issue. So definitely things that need to be accounted for. Added requirements on sanitizing practices. Rich already touched on this subject, that there is extra time required for cleaning. Practices that maybe were not even thought of before need to be accounted for now. It goes, again, all of this combined goes to your bottom line. What is it that it's going to cost you? And again, there are two factors. There are the direct costs that we can measure and see, because they are either through sales or through expenditure of more time, through paid hourly wages, or it could be very soft indirect costs, which again is customer experience. Maybe turning off the customers from really coming to the store because of the changes. So the question is here, what do we know? And I think it's a really good time to explore that. How can you gather that knowledge, right? Do you have one person putting it all in Excel worksheets? I think that in the day and age that we live in, we're past the Excel sheets. So there's got to be a better way. And workforce management can really tie a bunch of metrics in order to give you real-time information with which you can make decisions, and with which you can deploy your employees and engage with them to make sure that you really know where you're standing and how to react and respond to the situations that arise, whether now and definitely into the new normal, into the future. So once we understand what we're facing and what we're what is the information at hand, and what are the potential challenges and the indirect and direct costs, if any problem creates an opportunity. So, any change is a chance for us to move forward. And so we look at what is happening now. We look at the remote model that is taking place, right? So what is that opening up? That it's opening up the opportunity for companies to adapt and to evolve, right? Taking a look at, somebody working at, in a very metropolitan area where maybe they had to commute 1 or 2 hours a day, to go into work and go out of work. Now they're working from home, right? What does those extra 2 to 4 hours daily mean to the employee, but what does it mean to you as an employer as well? Definitely in the world that we live in, there's a lot of communication, but I believe that there needs to be centralized communication. So how do you make sure that your employees are engaged? How do you make sure that they're on top of things and communicating with you, right? Believe me, there are a lot of companies right now that they wish they knew exactly who they can count on because they're scrambling, right? So you have somebody that has 300 employees, and this is a small number. One manager cannot be making calls to 300 employees to figure out who they can count on, who's going to show up, who's having symptoms. So how can you make a centralized hub of communication? You can do it through workforce management, through the mobile platform. Even we're working on an sure that employees can in real time communicate with their employers about are they having any symptoms, are there any issues that their employer should be aware of, when they go to do their scheduling. So real time communication is important, and having a lot of people working remotely is definitely stimulating a new muscle, or a muscle that in a company, which is trust. um, there's a company that is in distributing. They have displaced 90% of their people to work remotely, and only a few people in the warehouse to pick and fill orders and distribute. There are effective ways that can definitely, allow you to adapt. But how can you make sure that all this is done cohesively? A big part of it is a great workforce management system that is able to take information, that is able to provide recommendations and give at your disposal real-time effective data. And Rich touched on that subject. All of this, creates a modern interaction and ultimately a hybrid ecosystem. And really, what we need here is we need a place where employees are, a platform where employees feel free or comfortable in, updating their information, their status, updating what's happening. Do they need to have time off? Do they need to request vacation? Managers, they need to know who can they count on. There's people in companies that are willing to give extra time all the time. They like to work overtime. They like to be involved. They like to be present. I know a gentleman. He is already over 5 years retired, and he still shows up to the meetings. Because he loves to be involved. And there's people that are in certain life circumstances where they are not in a place where they'd like to give more time than what they've already uh, decided to, and so they also want to give their input, right? And when you create a cohesive ecosystem, you definitely have a place to to create a place where employees can engage, can feel more a sense of ownership and a sense of involvement and being heard. And this all definitely helps to keep your people engaged through difficult times. So how can workforce management help shape the future? The mobile platform is more and more becoming very, very interesting. And Rich touched into the point that people like their own devices, and their own devices are a personal item now. There's a couple things people don't leave their homes without nowadays. It used to be your keys and wallet. Now it's your keys, wallets, and phone. So we know that these items, are being used, are being implemented, and the percentage of people maybe not having a cell phone is very small. So allowing people to use their own devices to stay up to date with their companies is another way that enhances their life because they're already up to date with what's going on with their uncles and family members and loved ones because of Facebook and other social media platforms. So, it is time for the workforce to come to a place where they can also keep up with information and allow employees to make sure that they're in touch and connected at all times. And, there's also a point of it with the device being a personal item. Everybody's bringing their devices to work. So touchless is going to change and it's going to become a touch-free word soon because you have biometrics, which is great. But my biometrics, we know it's still a very expensive way to punch in and to kind of connect to your work schedule. But there is a device with Bluetooth, and again, this is a very inexpensive way to make sure that you reduce body punching and other tactics that have been used in the past to try and override the system. When you bring your own device and you pair it to the punching system, you won't give your cell phone to your body for a whole day so you can go somewhere. It's a very personal item, so definitely there's some very cost-effective options to make sure that you keep your employees engaged. When you begin to gather all this knowledge that we've been talking about in a metric and formatted way through an intelligent system, you can actually begin to create forecasting. And we know that forecasting is measured by historical data, but we're also implementing new items that allow you to respond to new data, right? So maybe July 23rd last year was a sunny, beautiful day. There was a lot of traffic in retail. There was lots of sales because everybody felt like going outside and spending time. But this July 23rd, it may be a gloomy day. It may be a rainy day. And historically, when there are gloomy, rainy days, is a percentage of people that are decreased in traffic. So taking historical data and taking current factors definitely help you and give you suggestions. And then obviously you have your union regulations, your whether it's state or provincial laws. There is industry standards. There are different rules that would apply and would not apply to everyone. So our system takes all that information, all these complex rules and multiple layers, and makes it simple. Again, I've heard Rich make mention that some retail stores have wanted to have maybe one person in charge of a whole chain store scheduling, even regional, so multiple stores. So how can one person do that? If you give them a platform where they can connect with everyone and every employee can also connect, and that platform is able to formulate all this information, process it, and give the person, the scheduling person, the ability to create cohesive schedules, then it is possible. And again, it is enhancing not just for the company, but it is enhancing for the employee. Why? Because there are many people, like Rich said, that cannot arrange their lives for doctor's appointments, for kids' events, because they're living on a very short a window for their schedule to be placed. And so the more that we can give an employee a longer window for them to know what's coming up ahead in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, they are better able to provide a structure for themselves and take ownership of their lives and be able to make the decisions that they need to make and the schedules. So the other part of it is creating, being creative. Opportunities come from difficulty and solutions come from problems. So creating full-time out of part-time, right? So there are some companies that are not able to afford to have a lot of full-time employees and they depend on part-time employees. How can you give someone that is part-time a full-time job? You could share that part-time employee with another store, and between the 2 stores or maybe 3 stores, you can provide a person a full-time job, again, allowing them to be engaged. There is many ways to make it seamless, and there are options there, and there is technology that can do that. So being creative through difficulties is a good way to move into the future. So I'm going to show you here a very quick video of, you know, um, how the Bluetooth punching in system goes in. This is a phone screen. It's pairing to the Bluetooth punch device. It is paired. The person has punched in at 2 o'clock, and 2:04. It shows the information on real time. This is great because how many times has someone punched in and punched out, and then there's discrepancies in scheduling? This, again, I was talking about sense of ownership. This allows the employer to have real-time information as to what's happened, but now it also gives real-time information to the employee, so they know if something wasn't properly processed, like a punch in or punch out, if something was missed, and there can be notifications in real time. The other way that we were talking about in connecting and engaging, there could be a way, a situation where somebody needs to take vacation. Look at what's happening nowadays. We are past the microwave era. We're past that era. We are into the now era. People don't want to wait a minute. They don't want to wait 2 minutes. You know what happens with airline tickets when someone's shopping for vacations? They're constantly looking because the price could drop from day to day, right? So how can we help our employees make sure that they take ownership of their life, and they remain loyal and engaged with work, right? Maybe they found the perfect flight and now they're ready to submit it. They can put a request in real time to their manager, and they can kind of lock in that price for their airplane tickets for 24 hours. The manager can review, can make sure nothing's wrong. It gets approved, and we've helped our employees save money for their vacation, and that creates a sense of gratitude, a sense of of engagement that maybe we couldn't offer before, but now as employers we can. So this video here is showing a very quick way of how an employee can submit a request of time off, and very basic. Is it a personal leave? Is it a vacation? Is it an emergency? They provide their timing frame, and all this goes to the culture that we're living nowadays, and how can we speed up the process for everybody. And now they can submit it, their manager can review it, and within 24 hours they can have a reply. And forget just the nice vacation. How can we help employees respond to emergencies, right? We all don't want to be in tough situations. The employer doesn't want to be without an employee and trying to scramble how to fill that position. But in a crisis, a personal crisis, they can notify their manager. Their manager can have a pool of people, like I mentioned before, that may love overtime, and they're willing to pick up that extra shift. There's no thinking about it. There's no wondering about it. It's all there in the platform, and anybody, when they see a new shift, anybody that likes to work extra, they can pick it up. And it's just a way to engage employees now in the new normal that we're going to walk into. So workforce management is a platform that can definitely help us create a better system, because at the end of the day, every industry, their biggest asset is people. And we need to communicate with them. We need to understand where they're at. Rich touched on the subject with the gig workers. Gig workers are working in different jobs and roles because they want to own their time. They want to have a say in what they're going to do and where they're going to go. And so, this really hasn't changed. It's showing up in a different way. So how can you have a loyal, engaged, long-term workforce on your side to help you drive success in your company? Having a good platform that gives a voice to your employees definitely is a way. So response time needs to be increased. It's the time for adaptability. And you cannot adapt if you don't have metrics, if you don't have information. So analytics, how do you gather that information? A smart system can help you gather all that information. And this allows you to become flexible. There was a company that I saw that they were having issues retaining people. So, they started providing different resources for mothers and shifts that are just weekend shifts. So they're 12-hour shifts, 3 12-hour shifts on the weekend. So that way, single mothers could have the whole week for their children to attend, sports events or school events. And again, it created a more loyal, engaged workforce for them. And you can only do that when you have information at your disposal, when you have data that you can read, that you can measure, and that you can implement. So I'm just going to run a quick video here, but before, this image on your left shows you that we've added a task, which is cleaning and sanitizing, which is a task that may not be, was not there in February for a lot of companies, but now it has to be there. And so here in the video, you can see that we're trying to create a schedule, and we're trying to create two options with the help of the smart algorithm in the system. We know historically how many units and transactions there were. We also can see that every single task has been outlined, and that we've added the sanitizing task into the role for every single day, as you see a fit for your company and your requirements. So you can see there what the requirement has been placed at. And this all makes it very measurable, very simple. So right here, you can see that there are two options. There is 100% coverage, and there's a cost-effective solution. So what this basically means is you want to make sure you serve all your customers within the required shift, and you don't want any gaps. You can have 100% coverage, but right next to it, you'll see that there's an exceeding number, which is 6. So there's going to be 6 people that are going to be extra, not for the whole duration of the shift, but for some periods of time, because you cannot have somebody, leave at 10 and come back at 10:45. So there's going to be small windows where you're going to have extra people. It gives you the total hours, which is over 1,000, and $23,000 total cost. Now, on the cost effective, you'll be at 87%, which at some points of the day, you'll have less than what you need to cover the traffic demand, but you've reduced your hours and your cost by $4,000. So again, really, it comes down to what's important to you. And in these times, maybe some of the cost savings need to be implemented. So that the system can give you different options. You could even have a plan C, which, Mike Tyson is a source of inspiration, maybe not for a lot of people, but he said everybody walks in with a plan until they get punched in the face. So you can see here how the schedule is staggered throughout the scheduled workday and the different days. You can take a look at, in a visual mode, which is very easy to read and to see. And then from here, you can begin to add your parallels to see how much coverage you're getting out of the total scheduled demand. You can see here that we chose the cost effective, so you'll never have anybody above 0, which means you won't have any extra personnel at any given point. There'll be some times when you may need some, you'll be short in that sense, but really it comes down to preference. You can tweak it. Part of it is that these are recommendations. You can always go in and adjust manually whatever you want to adjust, which gives you that control, right? To make sure that you meet the demand as you see fit. So here's the schedule completed with the time frames, the tasks, and the personnel. You could click and drag the blue or orange, which really elongates the person's schedule. So you need them to stay an extra hour. You can do that very easily with a click and drag of your mouse. And here you can also see all the units that are present that carry your coverage, right? You can see your actual shift. You can see the head count, how many units or traffic, and how many transactions are foreseen for that period of time. So all this metric real-time information can give you the ability to respond to situations. So gathering that information is definitely important. So having said that, we're more than happy to answer any questions and to engage with you. And we thank you for, for the time and the opportunity.